Okay, so this is creating strong relationships in the classroom. I am Heather Martin.
I am Megan Stace-Labrat.
And it's right there. Okay. And this is just kind of an overview of ECC's 4 Commitments project and kind of an institutional view, as well as Megan's experience with implementation. Come on. There we go. Okay, so just a little bit of background on the 4 Commitments project. It focuses on just creating a positive environment and creating connections and like a welcoming environment in the classroom, and making sure that not only are faculty connecting to the students, but they're also facilitating student-to-student connections. It was launched, I want to say this is our 3rd semester of 4 Commitments. Previously, and it was launched by Anthony Ramos and the EDI office. And it currently exists in other colleges in different iterations. Odessa College calls it the Drop Rate Improvement Program. It's the Persistence Project at Oakton. COD calls it 4 Connections. So the reason it's done is because it would ideally yield higher course success rates, as well as increased persistence, and a reduction in any sort of discrepancies between different racial and ethnic groups. So as far as the project is concerned, it asked faculty to commit to 4 tangible activities that support student, faculty, and student-to-student engagement through 4 very specific tasks. And the first one is learning all of the students' names within the first 3 weeks of the course or of the semester. The second one is assigning an assessment and returning the assessment with feedback within the first 3 weeks of the semester. The third one is having syllabus practices that emphasize high expectations, while also acknowledging or providing flexibility, preventing any one project or assignment or exam leading to the failure of the class. So making sure that grade distribution is organized in a way that a student failing or performing poorly on one specific task is not going to tank their entire grade for the semester. And then finally, and I think the commitment you'll hear most about, is meeting one-on-one with every student within the first 3 weeks of the semester. So I'm going to jump back to the guidelines in a minute, those 4 commitments. But when I jump back, just take a look at them and think about like initial thoughts. Is there something in there that you already do? And what are some potential obstacles in upholding the commitments? Whoops, that's the wrong way. Okay. So if you want to unmute yourself, those on Zoom, if you want to just speak, if you're here in the room, thank you, or type in the chat. Just anything that you're already doing, anything that is a potential obstacle, or any thoughts you have on those 4 commitments. I'm not going to pick on you just because you're here. You have a contribution, great. Otherwise, it's fine. Nice, Elizabeth.
That's what I was going to say, is I'm not teaching now, but when I was teaching, I made an effort to do most of those things.
Mhm.
And I think they're all highly important. I think that learning the students' names is probably first and foremost, but all of the others are, you know, incredibly important as well.
Mm-hmm.
Anything exciting going on in the chat, Tyler?
Nothing yet, but I'll share, like, for me, the one that would be like the, ooh, I have to go out of my way to do this, which I think for most people in the program is that 4th one down. Like, it's usually the matter of like, hey, I'm teaching a class. I'm gonna encourage lots of students to come to office hours. I'll invite students to come to office hours individually.
Yeah.
But I've not done in the past, like outside of this project, like, ooh, like that's gonna be a thing in this class. I'm gonna meet with all of you in the first 3 weeks of the course.
That's definitely the one we've gotten the most feedback on, just because it has been the most cumbersome for faculty, because it requires redistributing their time or devoting time to meeting the students that may necessarily, like, might have been put elsewhere previously. So we'll talk a little bit later about how people kind of navigated that, but a lot of people just got creative with how they ran those meetings because it was such a burden on time.
There's one response, Patrick's either typing up a question, the chat, or is gonna unmute in just a moment here, I think.
Yeah, I can ask my question out loud. In regard to the third one, I believe in English at least, our major essay assignments require submission on the course reference file on Curriculum that students have to submit all of those, and a student can't pass the class if they're missing one of the major essay assignments for the course. I believe that's like an institutionally determined.
Yeah.
IAI.
Yep.
So like these two ideas kind of run counter to each other. Is there a way of like, because I have it so that they're able to submit revisions. That's my way of like sort of getting around it. But yeah, I don't know. Do you have thoughts about those two kind of ideas, like students' failure to submit this thing ultimately results in a failure of the course? Do you have an idea of how those two complications might work together?
Gosh, I hate to say this. Do you know what I'm gonna say?
Go for it, Alex.
I mean, the first thing that came to mind, and I think, Patrick, we might have talked about this in one of the NFO sessions. I could be wrong though. But I think like one thing that comes to mind is possibly just granting the student the incomplete if they're missing like one assignment based on the grade. And allow, like, so that would provide them the extension beyond the end of the semester. But again, that's not something that I would personally necessarily incorporate as like super common practice, because it, I would say, kind of delegitimizes like the timeline in the end of the semester.
I would argue that not submitting an assessment or an assignment is different than doing poorly on
I would
it.
agree
And
with
I
that
would
as well.
think the spirit of the third one is that you
Yeah.
turned in a paper and you didn't do well, or you tanked an exam, but you took the exam.
Yeah.
That math should shake out
I,
to not a huge penalty,
theoretically,
but if you don't turn in a major
Right.
assessment, I'm sorry, you did not participate in the course.
because theoretically,
Hmm.
Patrick, correct me if I'm wrong, but they can fail the paper. They just have to submit it.
I was actually just going and trying to look at Curriculum. That's what
Okay.
took me. I was like, oh wait, does this?
So if they do poorly on the paper, they could feasibly still pass the class if the paper doesn't count for, you know, a super high percentage
Yeah.
of the
Though I know in the
percentage.
composition courses, IAI says that they have to pass the final paper.
They have to pass the paper.
Yeah, I'm almost positive that's what it says.
I thought it was pass as well. That's the reason why I was asking, because I don't believe students can fail one of those papers and still pass the course.
I was actually going to say the exact same thing that Lisa did, was just my interpretation of it was that one still needed to turn it in.
Mhm.
Although it sounds like further discussion with the group has still determined that perhaps in that course,
Yeah.
it still can't be done, but that was gonna be what I said as well, that it was I interpreted it as one needs to at least turn it in and make an attempt.
Tyler, did you have anything you were gonna?
Yeah, I was gonna say, it's a really good question, and like outside of English, Patrick, there's other courses I know who've participated in it. It's like there's some specific health profession courses in which, like, I know some particular nursing classes, and I could be a little off on this percentage. It's like, hey, this course, there's a requirement that the final exam be 90% of the grade of this course. And that's not something instructors can choose to change based off curriculum they're given. But they have participated within this project.
Right.
And so I liked Lisa use the phrase "in the spirit of," and I like that a lot to kind of help interpret that third piece down, that like, for courses that do have the requirement of, hey, there's no getting around this exam, this project has to be 50%. Well, the spirit of this then is that absolutely, that's not gonna be an exam that like isn't given a lot of time and preparation in class for students, a lot of kind of support and scaffolding to it. That it's like, hey, to do this without that preparation, which would just be bad teaching to begin with, but like, in the spirit of this, definitely, hey, we're gonna do a lot in class to support this piece, even if we can't change logistically that percentage.
And
Or flexibility on a due date of a major
yes,
project.
and to kind of piggyback on that, I think the spirit is just kind of, I totally lost what I was gonna say now.
Spirit.
Yep, thanks, I remember that. It's in here somewhere, it's gonna come out as soon as Megan starts talking. Just to make sure, I guess, just to not take a punitive approach to assessment, and take a more supported approach to assessment. And so if there are like IAI guidelines, or if there is something programmatically that's kind of preventing you from adhering 100% to the literal, commitment, then, you know, I think just like Tyler said, making sure it's a supported environment with the assessment would kind of, you know.
I'm gonna add in on one.
Yeah.
So through the adult ed, a lot of what I'm trying to snafus I have are with attendance. And so just kind of similar, you know, like we're setting them up as much as I can for success. By the way, you've been absent this many times and this many times. So it kind of goes along with the paper, you know, how totally setting them up for success alone. And now you just have to hit submit by this date and then kind of going with that. That's a big aspect of it.
It's also worth noting that in ABAC, which is where Megan teaches, the grades and the students' progression through the program, there are no like traditional grades in ABAC. It's more like competency based. So it is possible for students to pass assessments while still missing the number of competencies needed to move forward to the next course. So that's another example of kind of how, and Megan will talk about that, but how it's been implemented, even if it's not totally aligned with a grading structure or parameters set forth by a program.
And I think part of the spirit too, like 2 and 3 go together in that students need early and often like, how's my grade? How's my grade? How am I doing? You know, it shouldn't be week 6 before or something, you know, so I see number 2 kind of taking care of that. But even within number 3, like, it's not really syllabi practices so much as maybe grading practices, looking at your grade schema, you know, and if you kind of try different things all along, you know, semester by semester, you might not take a holistic view and all of a sudden you realize that the homework percentage is out of whack or something
Right.
where student effort is bigger, but not reflected in the grade. You know, that there's some sort of imbalance
And
and
it
that can be
does-
right-sized.
Yes, and it does cause, obviously, clearly, as we've just demonstrated, it does cause people to at least reflect on the grading practices, even if it's not something they have control over changing. So, I am going to skip that. And, Megan is gonna talk a little bit about implementation, and I have a bit stuff, stuff. I can do it. You wanna talk and I'll just model, I can do your video.
Nana will show us first the name tent. So the first thing that we talked about learning students' names, which we all know is important and adds to just the whole rapport with students. But one thing I really liked is they gave us a name tent, which is super simple, but on the back of it, so put your name here, and then on the back, it has some amazing resources that are available through the college. And you have the QR code, phone number, and email. So a really great resource that served 2 purposes that I really enjoyed. When I first started teaching, I didn't know if students would want to have name tents or name tags. I didn't know if, I don't know, coming from middle school and going up here, I just wasn't sure. So obviously very helpful for me to learn names, but also for the students to obviously learn each other's names. So we're not saying like, she said this and he said that, but we could actually say, well, you know, Gabby mentioned this. That was very helpful. And then on the back, the thing that I loved is obviously at the beginning, we talk about all the resources available at the school, but now the student can say, you know, I need, or if they needed food bank, just scanning the QR code instead of coming up to me and asking for it was incredibly helpful. I see a lot of students using these. If they forget, you know, how to access wellness services, it's right here. So I really appreciated this one. It seems like such a small thing, but yet it was very useful and very nice. And I've noticed after having children, I have no memory, so it's nice to be right here all the time. And at the beginning, I can be like, hey, I'm part of this 4 commitments thing, so you have to put these out. I just blamed it on that. And it worked out really, really well. I was like, I don't have a choice, you have to do this. And now I notice even still like week 5, they're still putting them out voluntarily. So it worked very well.
And those are available usually, is Anthony still printing those?
Yep.
Are we, okay, so at the beginning of this semester, usually Anthony Ramos or Misha from the EDI office will send an email out with both the PDF of that file, and they will also let you know that there are like 1 million of them printed off in Anthony's office in Building F.
So that answers my question, I guess. I was just gonna ask if we could photocopy it, but also a photocopy would work with it, right?
Yes,
It-
it should, but I.
No, no, no,
Oh, no.
I can't, this is hoarding. I
No,
can't
it's
take
not.
it, really.
You got them, Chuck.
That's what
They're
they're,
yours.
that's what they're for.
You serious?
Yeah.
No, but actually take them because I made the mistake of just making a photocopy and then the paper like slowly bends down and falls. So you want the cardstock. It's much better.
I'm just gonna use this for about half of my students, cause there's like one half I can never get their names. It's been 2 semesters almost.
To Megan's point though, like using it for all the students would help in terms of like, ooh, they can all learn each other's, because even if you're struggling with some students' names, it could be like, oh, somebody else in the class can't remember somebody else. It's like, give them
Absolutely. I have them work in group projects. I'm like, you know her name? No,
No.
and they're in the same.
Exactly.
So I don't know, and I, like I said, I was just surprised that they still get them out, they still use them. And if you
Thank
put
you.
markers out, they decorate. Like, who knew? So it's kind of.
One thing someone said that like blew my mind in a way that really is embarrassing, because it's very simple and it shouldn't have blown my mind, is that they didn't use the ones with the QR codes, they used blank ones, but they had the students write their names on both sides so that their classmates could see the name. And for some reason, it never occurred to me that you can write on the back of a name tent. I know it seems simple, sorry.
But no, that's actually a really good point.
Depends, yeah, how the seating is arranged.
Yeah. Anyway, so there are your name tents, and again, the back of the resources on the back was like really, really helpful also, because it contains that. Literally can't think of the word, but people don't have to ask for things, it's right there. The assessment, which we kind of talked about, one thing that made me nervous, not nervous, didn't know how I was gonna make it all work, was getting an assessment done and getting the feedback within the first 3 weeks, just because of classroom time. But what I did is I actually put the assessment and the conferences at the same time. So I would have them do the assessment as I was also meeting with students and doing those one-on-one conferences. And that helped for me to get 2 things done. And I made it an assessment that I knew that I had to do anyway. So it was a quick writing assessment with a short reading, and then I was able to give the feedback. And these are things that, we talk about, we do these anyway, but it's more intentional if, okay, by week 3, I need to get this done. You kind of guide that and mainstream it to look for exactly what you want to give, what feedback you want to give them. I don't know what else. That was kind of all an assessment, because we really talked about that. Gosh. Any comments on assessment more than what we talked about before? Difficult, not? No, all right, I see the look, let's move on. Syllabi, we talked about that also a little bit with, that, and again, mine was more, looking at, because our classes are different, obviously I do have the curriculum, but also setting them up for success with attendance and with discipline, some of the discipline issues that I've had over the years, kind of going over it like 3 or 4 times to make sure we're really on the same page, and making them aware of all the requirements for class. And then thinking about, how does the grading match up with what is my true intention here? What do I really want them to get out of class? So it made me kind of go back over the syllabus and just think, what is my real goal here? Is it that they show up for class and get through it? Is that they can write, a 3-paragraph essay? Just really being more intentional with that. The last one are resources. Events on camera.
That was the back of the card.
Oh, okay.
So there's
never mind.
one,
But wait, I
I
have
can
one
jump
more.
into that, yeah.
Oh, go ahead. Just go and we're done. Okay, so one of the things that I did add as a result of this was I made sure to get a campus tour for everyone that really aligned directly with my students, instead of making it just a general campus tour. So I have a lot of students interested in nursing, welding, dental assistant. We had a dental assistant this time. So, we just very specifically, it was really awesome. So they were able to say, this is the building I want to see. This is what I want to see. And then, kind of gives them that motivation to keep going. That was one thing that is not necessarily one thing that we talked about with core commitments, but a really great added on that was a result of experience. Oh, right, my turn.
No, I was just gonna say, one of the kind of, not a guideline, I guess you're encouraged in participating to connect your class with the larger ECC community. And, for like, that can look like a lot of different things. I think like for ABEC students, over in Building K, it can be kind of intimidating to come over and not know what goes on in like the big, larger part of campus. And we've had a couple of presentations this week already about people who have had campus resources come into their classrooms, either just for like a visit to introduce themselves and their services, or on a regular basis to provide support for the students. But just like Megan said, like a quick campus tour, if it's like, hey, let's all walk from my classroom to the right place, or to the tutoring center, or to the math lab, just so you know where it is, or let's all walk to student life, and like someone in student life can tell you what goes on. It doesn't necessarily have to be an academic support or like a mental health support. It could also just be like integration into the campus community through student life or a student club or an activity or something like that.
Yeah, that's what I had, the wellness came in this semester and talked about like the plethora of things that they have available. So really just making more of an effort to make, like you said, we're kind of over in K, making them aware of everything that's offered through that.
With the food pantry, my husband is like, he marched his students down there. He's like, I don't want anybody to feel shy or out of place or whatever, like in class, we're all going, got them all signed up and so just, yeah.
Your husband teaches here too?
No, at a different school.
Oh.
Wheelies are everywhere. No, I'm just kidding.
I don't teach, so I use his experience as example.
Yeah. Where is the food pantry?
By student life, by the Job Lounge. So if you go through B, past the lounge,
Maybe I need a campus tour.
I'll give you, I would love to give you a
This
campus
is the
tour.
link, so it's,
I can do it
that
after
way.
this.
I just teach and go home and
Yeah, oh, well, that's another thing. I highly recommend, if you need a campus tour or you're not sure what an office does, just shoot them an email and they are happy to talk about what they do or to meet with you, either with your class or individually, so that you can talk in a more informed manner about what they offer for you and your students. But I'll give you a campus tour whenever you want.
All right. You good? I don't want
Yeah,
to-
we can talk about the obstacles. Do you want to talk about your obstacles with the one-on-one conferences, or do you want me to talk about some of
I was
the?
gonna go with connecting with.
Go for it.
Students and not skip that. I didn't mean that. Okay, anyway, struggling students, I found that the one-on-one conferences that I had, like we talked about how time management wise, it can seem like a lot to meet with each student individually. However, it was incredibly worth it because I was able to discover exactly, my sheets that I'll show you are very specific and direct, so that we could kind of figure out exactly why are you here, what are your goals, how can I help you? And just taking that time to really have a direct conversation instead of just in passing, how's it going? It was very beneficial, and I feel like even if it started to get too long, like some students really enjoyed talking. And so I'd have to say, I need to meet with some other people, let's talk after class or during office hours. So I was able to set, and I learned that after a few times that I had to set, we're not talking more than 5 minutes, let's move forward later on. I was a little concerned that some students might not want to talk about their struggles, why they were here, and that was fine, but I found that most students really wanted to share. Like, here's what brought me to school, here's why, I still have to finish my GED, and we were able to really kind of tailor things. And then if I had a lot of students or any students who I found were having a hard time with attendance, being able to connect with them every 2 to 3 weeks. Hey, I noticed you've been gone 2 times. What's going on? How can we set you up for some success? I feel like my attendance has definitely gotten better as a result of connecting with them on a consistent basis, like having intentional connection instead of just saying, glad you're here, where were you, kind of thing. So, now it's you.
Thanks, okay, with the one-on-one conferences, like we said earlier, that's been the largest obstacle for people who are participating, just because that's a lot of students and it can be a lot of time, because like Megan said, sometimes they really have a lot to say. So we've had, I mean, some faculty required students to sign up for office hours, some faculty attached like a very minimal grade to it, so that at the beginning of the semester, it was significant, but by the end of the semester, it was completely insignificant. Some people would use class time for that and that looked different for different people. Sometimes it was like, okay, you know, you're all working on this, and then I'm gonna pull you out like every however many minutes and go through a rotation. Other people use like the last 5 or 10 minutes of class, every class period, or once a week or whatever, to meet with those students one-on-one. So that was, it was a pretty wide range of what was done. I know there was one faculty member who participated with an asynchronous online class. And that faculty member ended up scheduling Zoom meetings with each student in the first 3 weeks of class. And I believe I don't want to say the wrong number, but definitely had better retention in that section than any other section that they taught.
I mean, I did the 4 commitments and then I had an online class and I remember hearing about that instance. So I intentionally scheduled the one-on-one conferences and I definitely had better retention over the summer, which was, you know, summer tends to trickle off after a while. So it was worth it again to have, you know, everyone in a breakout room and go back and forth. But because they were also doing an assessment that they needed to do, it worked its way out and the benefit was definitely worth it. So.
Does anyone have any questions or comments before we move forward?
I'll just affirm, like, the online asynchronous is a piece I've heard from other faculty to participate in it, and like they're surprised that, maybe not surprised, but like having those meetings made it so much more likely students would actually ask them questions in office hours or just reach out in general. They mentioned like, oh, I'm very not used to ever having online asynchronous students like want to set up a meeting or a conversation. But after it's sort of set up, it was the point of like, oh, students are coming every week now, and that's, which is unheard of for this person online asynchronous.
No, it definitely, like, the rapport was built and just, you know, even again, taking the time to say, I'm noticing that you're not coming, just little things like that. Or even, you know, I have them ask, you know, I ask them, you know, what else do you have going on outside of class? And then you can say, oh, how was your job today? Just like building that, which we all do, but I guess making it more intentional and paying more attention to it.
And with the online async piece, like both the blessing and the curse of online async classes is that students take them completely in a bubble. And sometimes students do that intentionally because they work better that way or because they don't want to engage with people in that capacity. And other times that is, you know, the Achilles heel. So just like putting a person and like an actual human to it is nice. Yes, John.
Yeah, I have a comment, a contribution, maybe
Yeah.
it'll take 30 seconds, going back to what Tyler was hinting at about the big stakes test at the end, you know, gigantic. Since I teach anatomy, what I decided to do was, since I'm showing a bone or a muscle and I'm asking them what it is, I'm always worried, like, you know, maybe they have someone helping them. This is the online class. So I said, I'm gonna decrease the size of the test by 10 points. And I'm gonna have them do a 10-point assignment where they show me 10 things. So they're literally, they didn't know what to do. So someone did it and then I said, that sounds good. So they showed the laptop and their finger. They said, this is the femur. This is the head of the femur here. And you can tell it's the left femur because of the bumps. You can't see here, the condyles are in the back. Now, I wanted them to show themselves, but you know, they're, all I see is their finger, but you hear their voice, you know. So my point is, they are kind of getting into that now. They're kind of loving it, and they're like, one of them put music in the background, and they're like interacting in that way. And it maybe in the future, I'll make the test even smaller and make that 20 points. I mean,
That's
it-
really creative.
It just
And it
came
sounds
to
like they
me
enjoyed it.
No, I'll be honest with you, when I was at Wright College, there was this older teacher who was past retirement. And he used to have the students show him the things on the cadaver. College of DuPage, he would have them show things on the cadaver, he worked at Wright too. And he would just sit there and he would have them show in front of other students. So this isn't the same because they're at home, but it's still sort of like and I put them on a YouTube, what do you call it, a playlist? And then so some of them submit it and they're like, you didn't put it on the playlist yet. I said, oh, I've been busy. Like they wanted to be they want to be part of that online community.
But you know what I love about what you did versus what you said your colleague did? Is that's a lot of stress to be in front of the class pointing out things. But if they're just in their room or their kitchen doing it, you're getting the same result, but it's a lot less pressure for them. So I think that's really cool. Did you ever hear the Miley Cyrus song? They need to be, that's what my kids always sung about the bones.
I feel like it's that, I was thinking when he said one student set it to music, I'm like, someday this project is going to culminate with like a class like playlist of the soundtracks of everyone's videos.
They know everyone's voice and finger, but I like to see their faces. Oh, actually, I said that. I said, if you show your face, you show me 10 things. But if you don't show your face, you might be looking at a list, so it has to be 20. They're all doing 20. They just don't want to be on camera, I guess.
That's fun. I like that. All right, so Megan, I'm gonna pass that, you talk. Megan actually, to kind of formalize the check-ins, Megan ended up making little conference sheets for her students so that she could have kind of a documented responses.
So these were very, like, I tell them I need them to be honest with me on these. So for example, question number, I'll just go over them. Question number 1, why are you working towards getting your GED and what are you looking forward to doing after you earn your diploma? That's kind of a given one. What do you want to accomplish while you're in this class? Not everyone, you know, sometimes people are saying, you know, I just want to make sure I can pass the science. My first goal is to pass science. Then I like to pass language arts. What makes you nervous? I love this because, you know, some students have only been out of school for a semester. Others have been out for 10 years. So they're very, you know, a lot of talking out loud, things like that, getting homework done, trying to navigate it all. Some people aren't nervous at all, which is great. Number 4, I kind of tailored this to, so how can I help you do your best in class, and what do you want me to know about you as a learner that will help you succeed? This one guides my discussion of, you know, it's my job to help you to pass your GED. That's why I'm here. But you need to tell me what you need, because if I don't know what's going on, if I don't know if I can't tell what you're struggling in, then I can't help you. So it really gives them the ownership of, you know, I'm here for you because I wouldn't have a job if you weren't here right now.
Mhm.
So, you know, you need to tell me I'm working because you're here. Number 5, other responsibilities outside of school. This really helps me to know, like, some people are taking care of parents, taking care of children, they're working. It gives me a good idea of why they might not be getting their homework done. So then I can, you know, say, instead of doing the whole reading, just do questions 1, 2, and 3, because we're really focused on main ideas. So that guides that discussion. Number 6, what circumstances prevented you from finishing high school? Obviously that goes along with my class, and so you would tailor this to your class. But this also helps me know what are their anxieties about being in school now? What prevented them from finishing, and how can I help that to not happen again so that they can pass their get their GED. How long has it been since you've been in school? This one is really helpful, and it could be helpful for any class because it determines, you know, if they were gone, if they had quit 10 years ago, then they have not done as much nonfiction informative text reading. But if they are just done, then they've done more of citing evidence. So it helps me to know where they are at a reading level and what skills they might have. And then the last one, is there anything else you want me to know? It's amazing what you can get and what you can't get. But again, I like to ask these very specific questions, and I tell them this, so again, I can help them in the best way possible. You know, I've only got you for a few hours a week. Let's get the most you can and let's get you through. So that kind of is where, and again, it was worth it to take the time to connect.
So when you did these conference sheets, did you meet with them after every conference sheet, or how did you do that?
So the first one I met with each of them individually. The second one, so I have 5 total that I do, which ends up almost being like every 2 to 3 weeks, which seems a lot, yes, in theory. However, the second one I passed out and just had them give back to me. And I read over them. And what I like about the second one is at the bottom, it says, is there anything you'd like me to know that will help you in class? For this one, I actually got a lot of questions, like, for example, when are we gonna talk about science? When, if I don't get any feedback on an assignment, does that mean you didn't get it? I didn't get anything wrong. And then I was able to answer this question for everyone, because if, that person has a clip for that question, I'm sure everybody else is question, or many people are questioning it. So that helped me to clear up, I think, some confusion. For 3, I think, again, it's gonna be I read over it, but this one has a specific writing. We're starting to work on writing. So what I like about these is you can totally tailor it to where you are and what you need. So for example, if you're starting finger anatomy or whatever, I clearly am not science. Finger anatomy, you could, say, are you having any specific trouble memorizing certain bones? And then if they are, then you can check in with them. Or, how are your absences going? Is there something that is preventing you from getting to school? It kind of provides that tailored check-in. Another thing I thought of as we were talking about, different ways to do conferences, you could also do a Google Doc and then have them respond to you and you respond back to them in that document if needed, if you don't have time to check in. So again, as the semester progresses, it goes specifically with kind of where I am. And then the 4th one, I know it's a lot of paper. Sorry, Heather, I'm just really gonna blame you.
Getting my steps.
I heard that I'm not supposed to make as many copies this semester, so I didn't do these.
Me too.
So for example, in conference sheet 4, question number 4 says, being honest, how much effort are you putting into class? Because by conference number 4, I'm starting to see some people maybe dwindling down. So let's do a check-in. Let's be honest here. You said you wanted to get your GED. Let's regroup. What can I do to help you? Do you need to focus just on a certain test? That kind of thing. And then, like I said, number 5 is the culmination. And really kind of getting them to be accountable for if you didn't pass all of your tests, why not? And let's figure out how you can do that next semester. So they're just really kind of tailored to, again, where we're at in class, but really helpful.
Did you give 5 your first semester? I feel like
I did.
Did you?
Yeah.
Oh, I thought you had added more. Oh, you changed them. That's what it was.
I changed them.
Got it.
And that was also nice. I'm able to change them up based on, what I'm seeing. If we're ready to do writing in conference sheet 2, then I might add something about writing. And again, it's that check-in with them. And then they also have to reflect on themselves. And, I like how honest they are. They'll be like, no, I'm not doing my homework at all because I'm working all the time. I'm like, well, that's fair. You have to work. Thank you for showing up to class and, just do this one assignment instead of the 2. Like, get through what you really need to do. So that is that.
Any questions or comments about the conference sheets?
I can see that this would be super helpful to get folks talking and for many of the other positives that you've already shared about how it helped you to tailor your lessons, tailor your conversations, all kinds of things.
And if I'm sorry, go ahead.
I'm just curious, is this given to students that meet on campus twice a week and then you discuss it? Or is this like bring it to the meeting at 2 o'clock in my office type of thing?
I don't do the office meetings. I just meet with them during class.
Oh, okay.
And for example, for conference sheet 2, I didn't meet with anyone. There was one student who did write something that I specifically met with him about, but the other ones, I just kind of answered the questions in general. Yep.
And I heard you say something about you have to make less copies. I got that memo as well that I made.
I didn't get that memo, but But I know the
I know,
push
I'm
is,
sitting.
Elizabeth.
I didn't get the memo,
Said
but the
that to
push is
you.
to be more on, do more online reading. So I'm not making as many copies of my packets of Common Lit. We're just doing them on. But I'm sorry, you got the memo.
But I mean, do you, well, it was a warning, so.
I didn't even
During,
get a warning.
apparently
It was a warning.
I made
Coming down.
apparently more copies than like the whole department or something, I don't know, but something like that. But I toned down, and cause I was making copies of like everything. So, the thing is, like, do you do these on D2L? I guess what I'm trying to say is I actually prefer it on paper myself. I wanna like, write on it. And also GED, so are you like sort of looking at their writing
Yeah, that's-
skills too?
Yes, like the first conference sheet gives me a great indicator of where they are at writing.
Hmm.
So. I do it.
You can also
You
do
could
it in
take
D2L
them
or is
and
it-
have Heather do them on her
I know, I was gonna
department.
say,
Yes.
Heather could just make the copies.
Just ask
Someone-
Heather.
Maybe someone has my code
I'm
and.
not gonna. I'm not Tyler. You could also do it in D2L or as a Google form or whatever,
Yeah,
kind
just
of
like send it an
acceptable.
email and have them reply back in it. Sometimes I do that if students are absent.
This is wonderful. I will definitely use this as a template for, keeping track on them. Like, instead of why are you working at your GED, why are you taking a anatomy class,
Why are you here? Yeah.
And then the other thing is I experimented with something similar to this on my last test. I couldn't think of a last question and I was just like, how's it going? Smiley face, how's the class going? And some of them just loved that. They're like, oh, I love it, I love it. And one of them was like, I'm working on finishing this test. And that's all she put, like, no time for chit chat, I'm working. And so this is probably better that, cause I gave her the points, but I said, next time you get a question like that, answer it. Don't just say, I'm working on the test, I wanted to know how it's going in but this is wonderful, and it's like every 2 weeks, 3 weeks.
Yeah, I do it like every 2.5, depending on depending on the class.
Is
Yeah.
the GED course just everything, like, arithmetic, math, whatever, and science?
I don't do math.
Oh.
Math is a separate one, but I've got like.
No mistake, Megan does not
There's a
do math.
wall. I do science, social studies, reading and language, and constitution.
So they get their GED in about a year?
Depends where they
Yeah.
start.
Depends on
Oh.
the starting.
Some of them are reading around high school level and have recently left high school settings, and others may have been out of the system for a while.
Hmm.
While we're talking about conference sheets, I'm going to plug the TeachECC session for this afternoon at 3:30 because that is all about introduction or like introductory surveys. So if this is something that you're kind of finding interesting and want to hear more about people's experiences at 3:30 on Zoom, Manuel Salgado will be presenting on his use of introductory surveys and the benefits that
It's
it's.
just on Zoom, right? It's not
Yes.
here? Oh,
Nope.
okay.
I can still give you a campus tour though, Chuck. Okay, let's see. So the commitments by faculty, we're participating in the assessment activities, which we outlined and Megan described her experience with. There were also like student, faculty and student surveys, as well as some debriefing meetings. Reaching out to the students prior to issuing Spartan alerts. So if you do have a student that is not, that's struggling to keep up academically or struggling to meet the expectations for some reason, not just issuing that Spartan alert, but first meeting with the student, seeing what support they need, and then issuing that. Yep.
What if you emailed this student once, twice, and then there's no response? Is that
You have
okay?
reached out.
So
It
that's
just says
Spartan
reaching
alert
out.
time? Okay.
Yeah, you can, yep. Attending a campus event with class, which we talked about, and if you're someone who teaches in the evenings or when campus is not quite as bustling as it is during the day, there are several offices around campus who either are open late, or if you contact them and say, hey, I have this class that goes until 9 o'clock, oh, I know we have Patrick on there, 10 o'clock, I don't know what time you leave here, Patrick, but I know that it's late. You know, would anyone from your office be able to meet with my students, even if it's after their hours? Oftentimes they're able to accommodate it or at least give you some information. And then inviting an academic advisor to the class prior to registration opening for the next term. So that way you're just helping set your students up for success, not only in your class, but making sure that there are fewer bumps in their journeys between semesters.
I like, I do that with, Elena comes and talks to my classes about next steps after getting your GED, and she comes like mid-semester. So it's great to give, you know, if they're starting to feel like maybe I'm not going to put as much effort into the class, you know, there's the motivation to get there. There's an end in sight. We can do that. So that was really helpful.
And I think that's important for new students too. And if you're in a discipline like math or, you know, science has a progression of courses that they have to get into. We found in some research we did a long time ago, like, have you registered for next semester yet? If not, why not? And one of the common answers was, well, I don't know if I'm gonna pass this class, so I'm not registering. And it's like, the system will assume good things and let you register. So go ahead and do that. And then if you need to adjust, you can, but.
And not only like, do you know what you're taking next semester, but do you know who your advisor is? Because lots of students will maybe not. So just making that connection. So here are some, because we're only a year and a half in at ECC, these are some opt-in results that you can see, and I'm just gonna sit down because it's easier for me to see it that way because of the glare, sorry. So from fall 2016 to spring 2017, the persistence rates at opt-in were up. You can see the ones that participated were 82% and or almost 83, and non-participated was 58.6%. And then you can see the breakdown by race and ethnicity. So you can see that the discrepancy right here in those groups that participated was much smaller than it was in the groups that did not. So it helped kind of close some of those gaps. Sorry, we were one semester in the first time we did this slide. Apologies. But we had 65% in the intervention sections compared to 63% in the non-intervention sections for course success. And for enrollment, it was slightly higher in the intervention sections compared to the non-intervention sections as well. And then just anecdotal data from faculty that we've had participate was students were much more willing to connect with faculty during office hours. There was a greater sense of community belonging. There was increased peer-to-peer support. So not only were students more willing to go to the faculty for support, but they were more willing to ask their classmates for support. Anecdotally, there was increased retention in those sections because students have been less likely to stop attending without communication. Again, jumping back to that willingness to communicate and engage with the instructor a little bit more. And then again, one faculty member, like I mentioned earlier, mentioned having the highest retention in an asynchronous online class since it has been offered. Students have shared more of their personal stories that might not have been identified. And this was something that was, I think, a little bit overwhelming for some of the faculty at first, because when they had the one-on-one conversations, they weren't quite sure what to expect. So, you know, some people might have expected students to say, hey, like, this is what I want to do after college. Here are my next steps. This is why I'm in your class. But a lot of students disclosed like fairly heavy, like emotional life things that were going on. And so that was an opportunity for the faculty to connect a little bit more and like use other participating faculty to support, but also for the student to kind of have that connection and faculty to provide that resource for the students if they did need additional support coping with those big life changes and occurrences, you know, between wellness and things like that on campus. And then, yeah, faculty were able to refer support services for issues including transportation, financial emergencies, and like I said, wellness. And things like transportation issues or financial emergencies, they might not have known about without the open communication between those students, because those are things that the students often they don't necessarily come up in class, you know, if the student's there and not necessarily engaging with their peers or with the faculty. But once it was disclosed, the faculty had the opportunity to support the students through those issues. And then participating or the feedback, they've, the biggest time commitment, like we said, was the one-on-one meetings. The investment of time was worth the increased engagement and sense of community. Some faculty added additional one-on-one meetings for grade check-ins and progress on project conversations. So not just that first 3 weeks, but then throughout the semester, here's where your grade is. How do you feel about this? What do you want to change moving forward? How are you doing on this big project? What support do you need? And then, let's see, faculty have invited various support services into class, which we discussed already. They've shared that the intervention sections are their most engaged classes. So faculty that participated only participated with one section. And they did notice a difference between those sections and the other sections. And then faculty reported that making time for the intervention had little to no impact on the amount of content needed for instructional purposes. So those faculty that might have been worried about the time commitment, pulling from time spent with content, found that that was not an issue and that trade-off didn't really need to happen. All right, now, before you answer these questions, do you have any questions or comments about anything discussed? Chuck?
Yeah, I obviously know the title of
Mhm.
today's presentation, but due to technical and other issues, I missed the first 5 minutes. So the relationships is teacher to student or student to student or both?
Yes, so this, I mean, it's teacher to student and student to student, but
Okay.
yeah, it was just the 4 commitments project, which you've probably received emails about and will again. Any other questions or comments? Sorry for the quick scroll. I don't like when people do that. Yes.
I just like, am really happy to hear what a wonderful experience it was and how it's really impacting in such a very positive and tangible way what's happening in the
Yeah.
classroom.
No, I just have
Yeah.
two more comments.
Mhm.
Just can't stop. But one thing, the comment about the teacher, like I did learn a lot of information that was potentially a little heavy. And what I appreciated though is having, again, the name tent, which was clearly amazing for me. You could just go to the back and I could say, you know, sorry for what you're going through. Here are some resources we have on campus. So then they're able to take that ownership and get supports, and I could guide them to those supports as opposed to, you know, just listening but not being able to do anything. And the second thing, it talked about the peer-to-peer relationships that grew. I definitely see that because we do more just little icebreakers, you know, like never have I ever questions that take like 3 minutes, but yet the students start talking and laughing. And again, these are things that I just never thought that adult learners would want to do, but it's amazing how they'll walk in and like laugh about something that happened in class the day before. So just definitely that classroom rapport and atmosphere and just community has grown. So it's actually, it was worth the time and the setup for sure.
And for anyone that does it in future, we were like pulling from this little bag. For anyone that does participate in 4 commitments in future semesters, you get the name tents and these little soccer balls that have like different kind of icebreaker things on them. So for example, like one of the little patches says animated film I'd view again, beautiful beach I want to see, finest fast food. So this is just like a fun little icebreaker to use that you also get.
Could you go to the slide that said anecdotal?
Yep. That one?
Yeah.
Yes.
So it seems like the first 3 are pretty important outcomes
Yes.
of the whole project.
Yes.
And the word anecdotal just kind of makes it sound happenstance that you were like,
Yeah.
now that you guys are running
Yes.
the
The
zoo,
word
can we tighten
anecdotal
that up?
is because it was not, we weren't
Formalized?
far enough in.
Yeah.
To have institutional
Yeah.
data on the impact, but
Okay.
now that we are,
Okay.
yep.
A cool data point I'll share too from the Oakton one is, you have to go back to it because it's not actually on this piece, it's from a separate thing, is that, The other thing they realized is that the students who participated in sections were also more likely to contact and go to office hours of instructors not participating in the 4 commitments. And so it's a really cool thing of like, once they go like, oh, I met with my instructor Megan, like I learned that I can go to an instructor's office hours and it's not terrifying. They're more likely to go to somebody else's class and do that too. So it's this really cool, like holistic thing of like, oh, supporting them in this section, but also they're gonna have, it's like helping the student out beyond this course too.
Any other questions or comments? I'm only looking at you because you're manning the Zoom.
No, that's it. People, if people had to
Directly staring at
people
you.
had to log off based off class
Okay.
sometimes to teach it too, but yeah.
Gonna ask questions and stare at Tyler.
Mhm.
All right, well, thank you, and if you do have any questions, our contact information's on there, and Tyler and I, will, send emails for anyone wanting to participate in 4 commitments, at the beginning of each semester. So, yep, thank you.
Okay.
This was a very well done presentation. Thank you.
Chat.
Need you to share this with Andre then. Oh, it's.